Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is Just My Stupid Opinion, and we're here today to watch the PC leadership race. So it should be starting any minute now on, they're going to be doing a Twitter stream right to TVO. So we are going to be doing that. We are going to be watching that, and here we go. So here we go.
On March the 10th, less than a month away,
this is going to be a hell of a debate.
Ontario's Progressive
I
Conservative
hope to
Party
see
will
Doug
select
Ford
a new
do
leader.
well.
The Tories have led in the public opinion polls for about 3 straight years. And if those numbers hold up, the next Premier of Ontario could be one of the 4 candidates sitting at this table tonight. This is also an extraordinary race because none of the candidates is a sitting politician. Can't ever remember that happening before. And with that, we welcome, in alphabetical order, Tanya Granick Allen. She is president of Parents as First Educators. Christine Elliott, the former MPP for Whitby, Oshawa. Doug Ford, the former Toronto City Councillor. And Caroline Mulroney, the PC candidate in York Simcoe. And we are delighted to welcome all 4 of you candidates here to TVO tonight for what we expect to be a good-spirited discussion. I got to do 2 things before we start here. Often when we have Conservatives on this program, I got to do a full disclosure, which is that my wife is a PC party volunteer. She helped the previous leader's office with healthcare policy that was in the platform, so I put that out there for everybody's edification. And one other thing as well, we got 4 people in the control room running stopwatches to make sure that you all get truly equal time. And if 3/4 of the way through this, I interrupt somebody and say, actually, I need to hear from him or her on this, it's because we're trying to make sure everybody gets equal time, so don't think me rude under those circumstances. And with that, let's go. Running for the party leadership is a bit like a massive job interview. So let us start with that. In alphabetical order, just for the first round here. What is it about your skill set that you think matches up appropriately for the needs of your party and your province at this moment in its history?
Well, I may not be a drama teacher and I don't have a famous last name, but I can tell you, Steve, I am ready for this job. I'm principled, I have deep conservative values, and I'm in touch and I listen very carefully. I listen to the grassroots conservatives who've over and over again said that they want policies from the grassroots, not top bottom. And what we've seen happen time and time again after each election that we've lost is that leaders are not listening to the grassroots. So I'm here to be a grassroots voice for those who've been shut out about the process, which includes people who are opposed to the Kathleen Wynne sex ed agenda, pro-lifers, free speech advocates, and other social conservatives.
Christine Elliott.
We have one of the most important elections in our lives coming up in June. Ontarians are finding life more and more unaffordable under the Kathleen Wynne Liberals. So we need to win the next election, and we need to do so not just for our party, but for the entire province. And I have the experience to take our team to victory in June. I have been an MPP. I've served for 9 years.
Whoever gets
so I know
in
what
can
happens
beat
at Queen's
Wynne.
Park. I know the parties,
Whoever
I know
gets
the
in.
policies, I know the procedures. But I've also had the opportunity to travel across Ontario to meet Ontarians from Northern Ontario, where I know they're really struggling with jobs and the economy and hydro, to places across the province. So I know that. But finally, the most important thing is I know Kathleen Wynne. I've debated against her before. I look forward to doing that and bringing the PC party to victory in June.
Doug Ford.
Well, thanks for having me here, Steve. Tell my friends at home right now, a strong Ontario needs a strong progressive conservative party. They need a strong leader that is principled, that won't waver and change their mind and flip-flop. They will make sure that this province moves forward. Under my leadership, we'll have the most prosperous province anywhere in Canada. And I always say, Steve, that once I'm elected, we're going to put a big sign out right on the border. Ontario is open for business. We're going to make sure not only do we hold the bureaucrats at Queen's Park accountable, we're going to make sure all the political elites in our party are going to be held accountable. It's about getting the grassroots of our party to have a voice right now. They haven't had a voice. I'm the only person with actually governing experience. I didn't sit in the opposition benches and ask questions. I actually governed. Under our administration, we saved the taxpayers of Toronto over $1 billion. We put infrastructure, $1.8 billion into infrastructure. We do what we say we're going to do. We don't flip-flop. We make sure when we promise something, it gets done. We ended up getting rid of the car registration tax, the $60 car registration tax. We outsourced the garbage, saving $88 million. We saved hundreds of millions of dollars
And that'll
on the
be our
labor
tax
deal.
cut.
But the most important thing, I attract NDP voters, Liberal voters, and progressive conservative voters, and that's what you need.
It's
to win
true.
the
He's
province.
attracting people
Caroline
from all
Mulroney.
over.
Steve, people are desperate for a change in leadership at Queen's Park. They want Kathleen Wynne fired, and they want somebody who's going to fight for them. We've had a lot of upheaval in our party in the last few weeks, and I put my name forward because I believe that we need a fresh approach. We finally have an opportunity after 15 years of Liberal government to finally send the Liberals packing. We need a new approach to government. I am the only candidate here who's committed, who decided. I'm the only nominated candidate here. I bring private sector experience. I bring a fresh approach to governing. We need a leader who is ready to, who can win this race, who can unify the party, and who can beat Kathleen Wynne in under 100 days. I'm the only person here who has the drive, the energy, who's shown the commitment, and is ready to govern on June 7th.
No,
Let's
anybody can beat Wynne. That's been confirmed.
By running for the leadership and having been vetted by your party to do so, you have all agreed, according to your party's rules, in principle, to support the aims and values of the so-called People's Guarantee, which is what your party convention passed as its, in essence, governing platform leading into the election campaign. You know where I'm going with this. That promises to pay for all of its planks in the platform with a carbon tax. I know you three are against the carbon tax. I haven't heard you yet. Where are you on the carbon tax?
Well, unlike some of my other candidates here, I've said long ago I am against the carbon tax, and I did not have to take months to come to that position. I did not have to survey the grassroots like Christine Elliott to find out what my position should be. I am against the carbon tax 100%.
Let's say then the four of you are unanimous in your opposition to the one thing in your platform that will pay for all of the promises in your platform. So I need to understand, if there's no carbon tax, how are you paying for all of the promises that are therein?
Well, we need to be fiscally responsible and environmentally responsible. So we are looking at solutions for that right now. But one thing that we would do is do a value for money audit. And I was an auditor in a previous career for a bank. I know I want to audit Kathleen Wynne's economic mess that she's made of Ontario. We can find millions of dollars of savings there that we can use towards the principles and the programs that we've put in our platform.
You say millions of dollars in savings, but you got to find $4 billion if you want to pay for all the promises in the People's Guarantee.
Yes, and I'm certainly not saying that would pay for everything, but it's about $1 billion per year. Look at the money that the Liberals wasted. $1 billion on canceled gas plants for purely political purposes, $8 billion on e-health, and we still don't have a working system of electronic medical records. We can find those savings.
Do you have any other ideas to raise the $4 billion if you are in fact signing on to the People's Guarantee, which by running, theoretically you have?
Well, Steve, first of all, I was the first candidate to come out of the gate. I wasn't flip-flopping, I wasn't humming and hawing. I'm dead against the carbon tax. Carbon tax is terrible for the people of Ontario. It's terrible for businesses. It doesn't make us competitive in a worldwide
Let's
market.
establish that you're all against the carbon tax. How are you going to pay for the promises in the People's Guarantee?
Very simply, Steve, I can ask our listeners out there, in a $141 billion budget, do you think that we can find 2 or 3%? When I've crisscrossed the province, I've asked everyone that. Their first reaction, Steve, is they break out laughing. Second reaction is only 2 or 3%. So 2% is close to $3 billion. I'm the only one with a proven track record of saving taxpayers' money. We saved over $1 billion on a $9.6 billion budget. When we first went down to the city of Toronto, we sat around the table my very first day, and the CFO came up to us and said, "You're facing $774 million of pressure, and we have to raise taxes." Well, we didn't raise taxes. We delivered a 0% tax increase, made sure that we found savings, efficiencies. We focused on best practices, lean systems.
And you think you can do this at the provincial level?
We'll do it a lot easier at the provincial level than we did at the city.
Let me put Dan Robertson's quote up as I just get Caroline Mulroney to comment on this as well. He's, of course, a strategist in the leader's office, the previous leader's office, who tweeted after your positions on the carbon tax became abundantly clear, "If you drop the carbon tax, there is no, quote, rest of the platform. No middle-class tax cut, no child care refund, no mental health investment, no dental care for low-income seniors." So again, If you're signed onto the People's Guarantee, how do you pay for it if there's no carbon tax?
Well, the platform included the carbon tax, but also a value for money audit, as Christine was alluding to. And Doug talks about finding 2 cents on every dollar. I think that's a very good start. I don't think there's anybody in this province who doesn't think that the Liberals have been wasting our money for the last 15 years. The Fraser Institute announced just recently that they've increased pre-election spending by $7 billion. And the provincial auditor, somebody with whom Kathleen Wynne likes to argue instead of taking advice, looked at 14 programs out of over 100 and found $1 billion of waste. So they've created a culture of waste at Queen's Park. So we have to stop that. But the Liberals will come out with a budget in a few weeks. And if past performance is any indication of the future, I'm sure there'll be some spending increases. So on June 7th, when I present my plan to the voters of Ontario, it will be a fully costed plan, but it will reflect the new budget numbers.
You all know that the federal government mandates that you have some kind of climate change plan in place. The current plan is a cap and trade plan that the government of Ontario has brought forward. What's your plan going to be?
Well, Justin Trudeau doesn't tell us what to do in Ontario on everything, much as he might like to think he does. And we don't need to tax people in order to be environmentally responsible. There are other ways we can do it through innovation, new technologies, and so on. Ontarians don't need more taxes. We stand against that as progressive Conservatives. We want to lower taxes.
Would you keep the cap and trade plan?
No, I would get rid of it. Look, every time Justin Trudeau hatches some new cockamamie idea, it doesn't mean that we as Ontario have to accept it. Steve, we need to review this, and we need to definitely say no to cap and trade and carbon tax. And if Justin Trudeau tries to force this on us, I'll take him to court and I'll fight him every step of the way. And if he so continues to, and if we're forced to adopt this carbon tax, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll take our current gas tax, we'll change its name to carbon, and that'll be the carbon tax. But I say no to carbon tax. We're Conservatives. Let's stick to our values. Let's stick to our principles. Let's not adopt Justin Trudeau's policies. And can I just say one more thing? It would be nice for once in a while for us progressive Conservatives to support our federal cousins up there, led by Andrew Scheer, and support them in battling Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax.
Here's what Preston
She might
Manning
be able
had
to go
say about
toe-to-toe
all
with
this.
Ford.
You all know that
Who
he had
knows?
his conference recently in Ottawa. He said, it's fine to be opposed to the carbon tax.
Not bad, though.
But if that's all we've got to say, it's hardly adequate to address environmental concerns. Is there more to your environmental platform, Mr. Ford, than simply axe the tax?
Well, first of all, I call it not cap and trade, I call it cap and tax. And I had an opportunity to speak to a counterpart in Alberta named Jason Kenney yesterday. And if we have to take Prime Minister Trudeau to court, we'll take him to court. We are sending, I don't
Western
think the people of
provinces are
Ontario
becoming united
understand.
against Trudeau.
We are sending $480
So it's quite
million
possible.
to Quebec and California for carbon credits. That's done. That $480 million is staying in Ontario. This is about creating jobs, getting our economy going, making sure we start respecting the taxpayer. People are sick and tired of being taxed. We need job creation.
But you wouldn't
That's
deny
what we need.
you wouldn't deny that there is carbon tax revenue. There is cap and trade revenue coming into Ontario right now that the current government depends on and recirculates into green programs.
This Green Energy Act is a joke. It's what it is the Bay Street people are making hundreds of millions, billions of dollars on this. They're charging X, throw out a figure of, let's say 70, when they should be charging 10. The only people getting hurt on this, Steve, is the average people, the average household. They're getting gouged at the pumps. Gas pumps is another 4.5 cents. I'm about putting money back into the taxpayer's pocket, not into the government's
That's
pocket.
more or less
Let's
what
get
the
more on the
fucking
environmental policy
carbon
lowering
tax
campaign.
is in
If you're against
cap and
the
trade.
carbon
so
tax, if you're against cap and trade,
it's not exactly wrong.
what else have you got?
Well, conservation is a conservative principle, and we've got to look at all the ways that we can work to conserve our environment and our lakes and our rivers and our forests. We have to look at technology and ways to innovate our industries to make sure that we are working with industry to change behaviors. But adding a carbon tax at $50 a ton, even at $50 a ton, doesn't get to where we need to actually alter people's behavior. It's just adding taxes to people who are already overburdened.
Can I understand as well, are you all in agreement with the People's Guarantee for a 22% tax cut, the income tax cut? I'm seeing nodding head, nodding head, yes. You're all on side with that. Here's the question. If you look at the economic currents of history, we are actually, if one of you becomes premier, we will be due in your term for another recession. It's not to say it's guaranteed to happen. After all, economists have predicted 9 of the last 5 recessions. But is it prudent to be cutting taxes, potentially ballooning the deficit, leaving no room to maneuver should we have an economic downturn? Ms. Mulrooney.
It's important that we start putting money back in people's pockets. Our government in Ontario, this Liberal government, has been spending money without thinking about putting money back into people's pockets.
Even if it means going back into deficit?
The platform will have a small deficit. We're working towards it, but the idea is not to put the province into deficit. The idea is to get money back into people's pockets so they can spend it, and we can move out of any kind of difficulty that we have. This government needs to learn to do more with less. And
she was almost forced to go off script there.
The size of the budget has doubled under the Liberals. It's time that stops.
You are prepared to cut taxes 22%, even if it means going back into deficit?
We need to do it. We absolutely need to do it. People are really finding life difficult in Ontario right now. And when you have to choose between paying your hydro bill and putting food on the table, that's not a choice that anybody should have to make. We need to make sure that Ontarians can care for their families, that they can be successful, that our young people can find jobs. So we need to do it. We saw the federal government do that with my late husband when he was a finance minister. We did go into a deficit for a period of time, but we have to have a plan to get out of deficit. You have to be prepared to take the steps that you need to take. So does anybody want to go into deficit? No. But you need to, if you do, you need to have a plan to get out. But Ontarians
honestly,
right now,
he could not have asked a better person than Christine Elliott about economy.
I wanted to interject there because I wanted to
Jim
actually
Flaherty
speak
was
to
her
it.
husband.
We keep talking about this platform, but we need to recognize that was Patrick Brown's platform. That platform died the day Patrick Brown resigned.
That's not
the
what
day
rules of your
that
party
his
say.
leadership
With all due
was
respect,
stolen
the rules of the
from him.
party say you get to run for leader if you support the aims and the values of the People's Guarantee.
Well,
and
those
you're
are the
running.
policies.
Those
are the policies.
Not the People's Guarantee of the policy, of the platform. I will respect the leader. I'll follow their platform. People's Guarantee, sure, we can keep it, but I don't believe in the People's Magazine version of 90 pages. I've never been on a campaign. I don't think my friend Christine's ever been on a campaign that actually 10% of the grassroots people made the plan. I know 90% of the people on our party are dead against the carbon tax. Okay. How did it sneak in?
Why don't you finish your answer?
Look, there are a lot of interesting things and there are a lot of things inside the People's Guarantee, a lot of innocuous things put together. If we had unlimited money, sure, we could enact them all. The truth of the matter is, Steve, we don't. We got to get back down to fiscal conservatism, fiscal values, and get back to the principles that govern our party. This is what true conservatism is about.
Let me follow up on that. If you are all true conservatives, do I hear anybody here saying they're not a true conservative? No. Okay, so you're all true conservatives, in which case I need from all 4 of you an example of something that the current government of Ontario does that you think the private sector could be doing just as well or even better, therefore saving taxpayers money. Okay, Christine Elliott, go ahead.
I think that there's some work that's being done in developmental services, for example, where we have organizers and people that are working for the provincial government doing things where there are many private firms that are providing those services that could do so at a lesser cost and do it equally as well.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, autism service providers. There are some that are in the private sector that are doing a fantastic job.
Charities over government services, such as welfare.
Employed by the government.
So you might get the government out of that business.
I think that there is a room to move. Yes.
Doug Ford, how about you?
Well, I think there's so many opportunities right across every single ministry. I'll give you an example of what we did. We were the only people that were still getting public service on our garbage. We outsourced our garbage at the City of Toronto, saved $88 million.
Just to have to
west of Yonge Street. And it's unfortunate you haven't done east of Yonge Street. But when we go in there, there's tremendous opportunities, Steve. And to point out one single one, we're going to have multiple areas that we're going to look at. We will leave no stone unturned to make sure that we find billions of dollars of waste. We're going to create jobs.
In the private sector.
That's what we're focusing on.
Where you have to work hard.
But I'd like to hear just one idea of something the government of Ontario currently does that you think the private sector could do better and cheaper, and that you would therefore privatize.
Well, look at the Ministry of Energy. You know, there's a lot of areas in there, going back to the carbon tax again. Why do we need layers and layers of bureaucracy? Why? We don't need it. Once we get rid of the carbon tax, we're going to have to look at the ministry and see how many people are working on the carbon tax. How many people are working on the Green Energy Act? That's a waste of money. That's tens of millions of dollars of people that we can reallocate. Because under the City of Toronto, when we saved the $1 billion, not one single person got laid off. We found efficiencies and we transferred people.
I don't know if that's true,
department
but that's
to
pretty impressive.
department.
Okay, forgive me. I'm going to cut you off here because they're telling me already you're heavy on time. So I want to keep it even.
I don't know if
here.
that's true, but that's
Caroline
impressive
Mulrooney, one
if it
service
was.
that you think the private sector could do better, the government currently does.
Well, I think the delivery of technology across the ministry should be done by the private sector. The private sector is well positioned to do that and do that in the most efficient way. But I also think I agree with Doug that in the energy sector that if you look at Bruce Power and how it's delivering its services and its energy, that it's doing it in efficient and it's doing it very well.
Talking
Bruce is a
about
private company
doing
as opposed
talking
to
points
Ontario Power
and
Generation.
playing off what
Making a
everyone else
comment that
says.
they're not
No,
doing
I'm
it as
just
well?
giving you an example of
Okay.
one where the private sector does it well.
Okay.
Okay.
Not
give me an
much of an
example?
answer
You know
there.
what? I look forward to June 7th when I can open up all of Kathleen Wynn's books and go through a line by line item to find efficiencies in every level of government. I remember your brother, Doug, Rob Ford, the late Rob Ford. When I was working at City Hall, I worked for a city councillor. And I remember he was great at doing that outsourcing and making sure that we balance the budget. Like any family balances a budget. There are haves, must-haves, and then there are wants. We have to make sure that we're balancing it
I
properly,
feel like her
but that
popularity
we're
is
making
going
sure
up
that we're
the
not
longer this
spending more
debate
of the
goes on.
taxpayers' dollars. So if we can do something cheaper privately, let's do it.
We are sitting here in the Bill Davis studio. It's the William G. Davis studio. We've named it after him because he's the founder of TVO and was Minister of Education in the province for almost a decade. And he once said that if you get education right, everything else falls into place. So my question for the four of you is, you know the education system in the province of Ontario today. Tell me one thing you think it is not doing well that under your administration you would aim to improve. Go ahead, Mr. Ford.
Well, I'm going to say two things. First of all, grade 6 math students at 50% level at the province levels. So we should be in the high percentile internationally. So the Liberals right away throw $60, $80 million at it and think they're going to fix the problem. It's not. The other area that we have to look at.
So can I just understand, we got to teach math better? Is that what
I
you're
wish
saying?
my math
Absolutely.
was better.
We're going to look at all curriculum all the way down the board. But one of the key issues that I'm hearing from parents across the province is the Liberal ideology that's trying to be shoved down our throat with the sex ed curriculum.
Hold off on that. We're going to get to that. But I want another idea around education where you think it's not working right now, I will improve it, and therefore things will flow from there. Christine Elliott.
Well, I agree with Doug about math scores. We don't have an adequate level of students that are graduating with the proficiency that they need in
How do we
math
fix
to be
that, then?
successful. Well, I think we need to have more emphasis put on it, maybe more classroom instruction, get a group of experts together to find out what it needs to be done to improve those scores. But the other thing that I would say that we're not doing very well is with students with special needs. When they graduate, they can stay in school until they're age 21, but when they leave, they are basically given an Ontario Disability Support Plan application, and it's goodbye and good luck. They end up sitting in their parents' basements watching TV, no job, no friends, no housing, no nothing. So it starts with education. We need to do a much better job in helping these young people either move on to higher education, because many of them can do that, help them find work, or help them move into a program where they can learn life skills and move forward. We are really not doing a good job in that area at all.
Both for special abilities and
I also
regular
agree
students.
with Doug and Christine on the math scores. We need to make sure that our students are trained for math as they graduate and they go through their lives. And I think that we've got to ensure that our teachers are trained.
Give them
properly
smaller classrooms.
to support them in that. I
Give
think
them more
we're
control.
asking a lot of teachers these days. Classroom sizes are bigger, and there are a lot of issues in a classroom. And so we need to be able to provide support to teachers so that they can adequately address the issues that they see in the classroom. So we need to make sure that our funding is allocated to the classrooms, and we also need to invest in technology so that our students are well trained for their working lives.
I want to make sure I'm respectful to everybody here. I know you're Ms. Elliott, you're Mr. Ford, you're Ms. Mulrooney. What am I calling you?
Mrs. Granick Allen.
You got it. Okay. In which case, how would you answer the question?
You
I have
should
to
know
talk about
that,
the sex
buddy.
ed.
You should know
It's
her
my
name.
number one priority.
We're
here.
going to come
Jesus.
to that. Trust
I'm
me.
burning to talk about
I
it.
know you are, and trust me, we will get to that. But I want to know what else in education today needs improving that you've got your eye on.
Well, I bring it back to the parents. What is the feedback we're getting from parents? And again, I really want to talk about the sex ed, but if you're pressing me,
It's
of course,
not going to.
yes,
Sex ed isn't going to improve math scores. So tell me about something else.
Sure, but it'll definitely not stop distracting students, and maybe they could focus a bit more on math if they weren't talking about anal sex in the classroom. So Of course, yes, we need to improve math scores. We need to make students
That's a
and the
straw
curriculum
man, though,
more
argument,
competitive
though.
so we can compete internationally. And Ontario used to have such a robust curriculum. Now I feel it's been watered down, and we're no longer producing top international students who can compete on an international stage.
Okay.
They're getting into it.
Let's do it.
Shall we go here? I know all four of you are against the current sex ed curriculum in the province of Ontario. I know you all believe that there wasn't enough consultation. I know you all believe changes need to be made. Anybody prepared to be specific about how you would make the changes?
Could I interject there? I don't believe everybody here is against the sex ed curriculum. That's not what has been said.
That is not the case.
Okay.
In fact, I don't think anybody here is against the sex ed curriculum.
No, as it is currently stated.
I've heard some people say they will review it. Nobody has said they're against the sex ed curriculum. So if you
Except-
want to qualify that,
except
by
me.
all means.
All right, well, let's educate the host here, everybody. You want to say you are...
Well, I was starting off. People,
They did
what
talk
I'm
about it was the
hearing
liberal
across the
ideology they didn't
province,
like.
That people are sick and tired of the liberal
As Ford just
ideology
said.
that's being shoved down their throats. And that's from everywhere, right across the board. They did not consult with the parents. They did not consult with the teachers. I believe in educating your kids at home first when it comes to this.
Do you think the sex ed
They're a
curriculum needs
priority.
updating?
Well, I think we need to review it and change it. 100%, it needs to be changed.
What would you take out?
Steve, I'm not going to get into the details, but I can tell you one thing. We have the greatest teachers in the entire world right here in the province. And I have numerous friends that are teachers. They weren't consulted whatsoever. None were
I get it,
consulted.
though.
Parents were not consulted.
Parents were consulted, maybe not adequately.
Parents were not consulted on this education system, on the sex ed education, I can guarantee you. And it's not just certain groups. Everyone's saying, oh, it's evangelicals, it's this. No. I went to Welland the other day on 2 days' notice. We had a packed house of 400 and so odd people. And when I said we're going to change the sex ed, the place went wild.
Okay,
When
let's
I'm
go.
up in Ottawa, I heard
Ms.
the same
Elliott?
thing.
Okay, you're heavy
Hamilton.
on time already, forgive me. Ms. Elliott.
I'm not in favor of the current sex ed curriculum either. We do need to have a sex ed curriculum in Ontario, but I agree that parents were not consulted adequately. We need to open up the curriculum. We need to listen to what the parents have to say because they know their children best and they know the age at which children should be learning things.
You want to be more specific about what you'd take out?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I've heard from many, many parents, I've been speaking to them as well, is to the age appropriateness of certain measures. So maybe something that children are learning in grade 2 now, they should learn in grade 8 or 9 or 10. Those are the things I want to listen to parents and make changes where necessary. But the other whole area that the curriculum doesn't cover is things like cyberbullying and sexting and all of those things related to technology. I want to make sure that our children are going to be protected and that they have the knowledge and information they need. So we do need to open it up. We do need to make changes based on listening to parents.
Ms. Mulrooney.
I believe, as the other candidates do, that parents were not adequately consulted on this curriculum. And that's the problem. And that's the way it's been for 15 years under the Liberal government. They don't consult parents. They don't consult small business owners. They don't consult stakeholders the way they should. And in this case, the curriculum was developed mostly with bureaucrats and not enough with parents. But going forward, I will ensure I commit to consulting parents on all things that affect families and children. But I am not going to reopen the curriculum.
Let me be clear on your position. Is it your view that there is or is not a place for sex education taught in the public schools of this province?
Certainly there's a place. I'm not against sex ed. I'm just against Kathleen Wynne's radical sex ed. And I'm glad to see at least some of these candidates have evolved their position, and this is news to me. However, it's not enough to say that you will consult with parents. What you must do is repeal the Kathleen Wynne sex ed. So we're going to do 4 things, Steve. We're going to, number 1, repeal the sex ed. It's got to go. Number 2, we're going to review it. We'll do a whole review of all the line-by-line items within the sex ed. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to replace it with something that is age-appropriate, that doesn't sexualize children, and that parents are okay with. And the 4th thing, and I call this my 4 R's, is we're going to respect. Respect the parents. Always give them an opt-out. Always give them notice before these lessons are introduced, and we're going to give them ultimate responsibility to take care of their kids. They get to choose.
What is your guide on this?
My guide is my principles.
Where do you get them?
Well, I'm a Christian, as you know, but I think you could be completely atheist or agnostic. Most parents in Ontario are not comfortable that their child in grade 7 is learning about anal and oral sex. Find me one. I have yet to meet one. I run a not-for-profit that represents over 80,000 parents in Ontario. I have yet to meet a parent who's comfortable with anal sex in the classroom.
I hear you, but I think it's also fair to say there are parents out there who would be concerned if an evangelical Christian template were put on our sex ed in the public school system.
Yeah, but Steve, who's talking about?
I would be,
I'll
be honest on that.
That's not what you're.
We're talking about. We need responsible
that.
sex ed that teaches things like pornography. Right now in our curriculum, pornography is not even mentioned. I'm not sure if any of the candidates even read the curriculum. Does anybody know how long it is? How many pages it is? It's 242. I've read it and I see what's in there. But here's the good news, Steve. When I say that we're going to repeal the curriculum, the sex ed component actually only makes up 3% of the curriculum. So we're not repealing the whole thing, just that contentious part.
Okay, sorry. Kara, tell me what you just said in my ear again.
Then.
Okay, that's a fair point.
Forgive
we know
that.
what your faith is. I guess we should put on the record, if you want to, what doctrine or what faith you follow. Ms. Elliott?
I'm an Anglican.
Mr. Ford?
Protestant, as my dad always said, what do I have to be?
Okay. Ms. Mulrooney?
I'm a Catholic.
Okay, done.
Yeah, I
Let's
can't be.
talk about something.
I'd
the
love to
last
see an
conservative
atheistic
government in Ontario before
person
the
in the
Liberals got
PC
elected
leadership.
in 2003.
That'd be funny.
What they did, there was a finance minister back then by the name of Jim Flaherty, who brought in tax credits for faith-based schools. Liberals got rid of it. Would you want to bring that back?
No, I think we've heard well enough about that. That was something that we dealt with in the 2007 election. I think it's pretty clear that people do not want that.
Anybody here want that? Anybody going faith-based? No?
No.
Independent schools?
Sorry, are we talking about faith-based schools? Because that was a John Tory policy. But I think Jim Flaherty brought a tax credit for all independent schools.
He did, in all independent schools, which included faith-based schools as well. Is that something you'd entertain?
I'm happy to entertain any policy that helps parental choice and helps parents make the best decision for their child's education.
Okay. Let's also find out where you are on the issue of pharmacare. You know, the Liberals recently brought in something that says anybody who's under 25 is now covered for a regimen of, I think, 4,000 or so of the mostly used medications in the province. Who here would get rid of pharmacare? Everybody's keeping the current pharmacare plan.
Really?
We'll have to see. I would have to, once I assume office, we'll have to see and do a line-by-line analysis. We can't spend on everything. We have to do a line-by-line analysis. That being said, healthcare, I don't want to touch. I know the spending will always continue. We have an aging population. And, you know, as a Christian, as you brought up before, you know, I do believe in that adage, I am my brother's keeper. So we have to help those who are most in need.
Okay, another Liberal plan that was recently brought in.
Don't give them
was the
free
increase in
fucking
minimum
drugs.
wage. Who here would not bring in the next increase in the minimum wage, which is set to go in January 2019?
I wouldn't.
You would not? You would not?
No.
Mr. Ford, what would you do with it?
Well, first of all, my heart breaks for these people that are making minimum wage at the time, $12, and then jumps up to $14. They're leaving with about $50 more in their pocket from their office or their factory. The only people that are benefiting, they're getting a tax grab. It's the government that's increasing their taxes by 30-some-odd%. What I would do, I would cut the tax to zero for the people who are making $14 an hour. That will benefit the companies. It will benefit the person leaving their office or the factory. At the end of the day, under the Doug Ford administration, they'll leave their factory or their office with more money in their pocket, because I don't believe in having a tax grab on the most vulnerable people in society.
Okay, but I'm asking about the minimum wage. The next
I'm going
increase
to
does
give
not
them
go
a
in.
0% tax. They will not have to pay tax.
Okay, how about over here?
Look, the manner in which the minimum wage increase was brought in was
No
very
tax.
drastic and very sudden, and has crippled a lot of small businesses in Ontario, which is the backbone for our economy. So with regards to the next increase that's supposed to take place, I would hold off on that. Would I repeal the minimum wage increase? No, I wouldn't. But we have to be very careful. We can't just all of a sudden throw this kind of burden onto small businesses. We have to be very delicate. So the increase, no, but we'll keep it as it is for now.
What's your position?
I feel the same way. I think that this was brought in without adequate time for businesses to be prepared for it. It's very difficult for them to absorb an increase of this magnitude. I think that the next increase, we all want the minimum wage to increase, but I think the next increase is also a very large one. I would want to see it brought in more gradually, so I would hold off on the increase for 2019.
For how long?
Until our economy can manage it, until businesses can manage it, because I've heard from many businesses that this is really about to put them under. We don't want to lose more businesses in Ontario. Kathleen Wynne's already done a good enough job on that. So we need to keep our businesses whole and hearty.
You say until the economy's better. They announced today our economy grew at 2.9% last year, which is pretty buoyant, relatively speaking. So if not now, when?
But we have businesses that are on the edge right now. And what we're seeing is, as a result
It's
of this
all
increase,
about to collapse.
they're laying off some workers or they're decreasing their hours. So that's not helping anybody.
We lost a shit ton of jobs in
that the businesses
January in
can
Ontario
absorb
alone.
these increases and stay in business so people have jobs.
Caroline Mulrooney, what's your minimum wage position?
Well, I think that Bill 148, the minimum wage law, is a classic example of the way the Liberals have been governing this province, making decisions that help them in the short term, in this case, their electoral chances, and hurt the rest of us in the long term. And small businesses were suffering. They had options before this year to implement a minimum wage increase, and they passed on it. Instead, they did it, as we've been saying, too quickly. It was too much, too soon.
Right at the end, too
but
fast.
That said, $14 an hour came in on January 1st. I'm in favor of phasing in to the next increase. I believe that over 4 years, I believe that everyone should we want everyone to be able to earn a living wage and be able to pay their expenses and to participate in the growth of our economy.
So 4 years to get to $15?
Yes, a quarter a year.
A quarter a year, okay.
But this is a classic example of the way the Liberals have been implementing policy, and without consulting small business owners, without consulting medium-sized business owners who are really affected by not only the increase of the minimum wage, but all the other costs associated with the other measures in that bill that are hurting them. And so we've got to work with businesses to find a way to help them alleviate the pressure. They deal with a lot of red tape that has a lot of costs associated with that. So we're going to look at reducing red tape significantly to alleviate the burden on businesses.
This is another example of how all of you candidates have said tonight the Liberals
Now I
haven't
can afford
consulted
hockey
on
equipment
this.
and go out to eat.
I mean, the facts are different. The facts
Look
are
up that
the
quote
Liberals
by
have
Mulrooney.
consulted. They have just disagreed with those with whom they have consulted. They have chosen to go in a different direction. I guess the question is, you can consult, but at some point you got to make a decision, right?
Well, in the case of the minimum wage law, they looked at it in 2013 and 2014, and you're right, they did consult and they did receive advice from people and decided that instead they would index it to inflation. And a few months before an election, they decided to implement it. So you're right, there is consultation, and they've got to take the advice that works. But the problem with it is that businesses had already laid out their plans, their business plans. And so when you introduce this kind of legislation that is so important, that really affects their bottom line and their costs, they don't have time to adjust.
I thought actually when I asked a question earlier about what current government service would you want the private sector to allow, I thought one of you might say the sale of cannabis. Because as you know, the government is going to maintain the monopoly, not just on selling booze, which they've opened up a little bit, let's give them that. But the sale of cannabis is going to be in LCBO-style stores only. Is there anybody here who sees a role for the private sector in the sales and or marketing of cannabis going forward? Do we have any quasi-libertarians among the four of you here? Okay, Caroline Mulrooney.
The reason I didn't give you the answer of sale of cannabis, which you were looking for, I guess, was because you asked about existing programs. But this is something that they've been looking at. Yes, I think that the private sector is a better place to do it. But this is something that is we need a lot more consultation, and I'd need to get in and understand what the issues were, why they made the choices that they did, because it really impacts so many aspects of our society, the safety of our children, how police associations will be dealing with monitoring impaired driving. The implications of this policy and this decision are very wide.
Would you prevent it from happening in Ontario?
No, but I want to make sure that it's done in a responsible way, and they did move so quickly to the distribution and didn't focus on and how we were going to protect.
But do I infer from your answer that you do potentially see a role for the private sector in the sale of cannabis somewhere down the road?
I do.
You do. Doug Ford?
I agree. This is the emerging market. I think it should be treated similar to liquor, beer, wine. I don't like the government getting involved. I don't like the government having a monopoly on any business.
I could potentially see a role, but what I'm really concerned about is, first of all, the haste in which this is being brought forward, that we don't have proper rules and regulations in place. I am, as Carolyn is concerned about the
I don't think it's too hasty. Trudeau's
action,
just taken too fucking
driving
long to decide what he wants to do.
Somebody's high or not. Those
If he
are
was
all
competent,
concerns
he
of mine.
would.
But I'm also concerned about the lack of education for young people on the effect of cannabis on the developing brain. We know that it's about age 25 when a person's brain is fully developed, and there is some evidence. The Pediatricians Alliance has warned Eric Hoskins that he needs to be concerned about this. There is some evidence that if someone has an inclination towards schizophrenia, that excessive use of marijuana can bring on that first onset. So as a parent, I'm very concerned about that. I think we need to slow down and take the time to make sure that we get this right for the protection of our young people.
Last quick word.
There's a lot more
Well,
bad
again,
effects that come out of
Justin
from
Trudeau
fucking
has forced on
alcohol, but
provinces.
we allow that.
I always like to exercise extreme caution when dealing with the regulation of substances such as alcohol or narcotic substances. So
Then
this is a
decriminalize
tricky
it.
one. I will give Kathleen Wynne one bit of credit. She did raise the age where marijuana would be able to be possessed from 18 to 19. So I do give her credit for that. But otherwise, I'd like to exercise extreme caution in observing this.
Okay, let's talk some party politics here. I wonder, you all know that there were many nominations that took place under the former regime, which turned out to be quite controversial. 2 of those races have already been overthrown. There are going to be new nominating meetings held. There's a third one where the winner has actually said, Ben Levitt, full disclosure, I think he's a cousin of mine, distantly related, has said, I'm prepared to stand down and have a new nomination because the police, for goodness sakes, are investigating that one. Are there other
Jesus.
nomination races
I didn't hear
that
about
any
that
of the
part.
4 of you, should you win, would be prepared to see reopened and redone? Ms. Mulrooney.
Well, Vic Fideli and the caucus are looking into this, and they have all the information. I've been running in York Simcoe. I'm the only
Good old
nominated candidate
Vic
here,
Fideli.
and so I've got information
would we be
related
without
to my
him?
race. But I have confidence in Vic and the members of caucus who are looking into this.
Is everybody going to say the same thing? Because if you are, we'll move
Sure
on to the
you
next
do.
thing.
No,
No? Difference in
There are
Considering how
numerous,
many
probably
of them are
dozens
supporting her.
races which have been tempered by Patrick Brown, his corruption, and his corrupt executive. We've been calling on this for a long time, and nobody has spoken out. So while I know Patrick Brown is not here today, he's no longer leader, and I'm glad for that. And it's not because of the allegations of sexual misconduct which have been levied about it, but because of the corrupt manner in which he has run this party into the ground. You talk about nominations. Yes, there's several nominations, where there's been allegations of voter fraud, ballot box stuffing.
So you'd open these ones up and have redos, if you like.
Not just the nominations, even memberships. He's sought to kick people out of the party with whom his beliefs or someone who spoke out against him, like Jim Carahalios from Axe the Carbon Tax. There are many things that have gone on in the party that are corrupt, and I think we need to open up a lot of these nominations because this cannot stand. If we're true conservatives, then we have to be true to our principles and be true to grassroots democracy.
Azalea.
Well, first, I commend Ben Levitt for coming forward
Root out the corruption.
voluntarily to say that he would be happy to have another drive done and race in that riding. But I agree that Vic Fideli and other members of caucus who are remaining neutral have gone through all of the so-called contested riding nominations, and I feel confident that they are doing their job. So, but what I would say is going forward, should I become leader of this party, all nomination races will be open and equal, and everyone will have an equal opportunity. If they're approved through our normal process, they go forward, and if they sell the most memberships, they win. It's simple.
Doug Ford.
Well, we've seen a great example of the political elites in our own party, political insiders, coming up with their own candidates, which I find appalling. And under my administration, we're going to have a clear, transparent, and accountable nominations. I've talked to numerous candidates that came in
I hope he's not
second.
just saying that
been
it's not a Trudeau
appalling,
promise.
The stories I've heard. One person came up, they put their arm around the person the day before the nomination. Even one person was hours before. They sold 2,000 memberships, handed over $20,000 to the party, and they said, my friend, we can't have you run anymore. And by the way, don't worry, everything will be taken care of. Be a good party person. That happened in numerous nominations.
Not going to happen on your watch.
It's not going to happen.
Okay.
But this is all about the political
hope
elites,
not.
not the grassroots people that want to run our party. The political elites are done in this party, are done.
Patrick Brown's name came up, and I
Good.
just want to ask a couple of questions about
Good.
that. You all are, of course, up to scratch on the
Power to the people.
Carolyn Jarvis interview on Global TV, some of which aired last night, some more of which is going to air tonight. I want to just clarify a bunch of things. First and foremost, I think you have said publicly that if he clears his name, he can run again for your PC party. Is that right?
Yes, I have said that.
Are you making the same commitment to him?
Well, I'm not going to litigate this in front of the media right now.
We don't want to litigate it, but if he clears his name, is he allowed to run in Barrie next time?
Let me respond. I'm not going to litigate this in front of the media. The media has done this for the last few weeks, and the story is changing day by day, hour by hour. When I'm leader, I'll get all the facts. I'll sit down with Patrick, and we'll make a decision then.
Okay. Ms. Mulrooney?
I actually think that'd be one of the best decisions you could make in that situation.
Then he can run.
You sign his nomination papers.
I'm shocked to hear this. No, absolutely not. He should not run. And again, not because of the allegations of sexual misconduct levied against him, but because of the corruption, the corrupt manner in which he's run this party into the ground. I'm a grassroots conservative. So no, if you want to talk about due process, where's the due process for those candidates for nomination who were bullied out of races?
All right, forgive me, they're telling me about time, and I want to make sure I'm equaling it all out here.
She did not get that long.
That in their interview with Patrick Brown, he was asked, who do you think did you in? And he said his adversaries. And they asked inside or outside the party. And the answer suggested yes, both. Does anybody here have anything they can add to that? Was Patrick Brown done in by forces inside the Progressive Conservative Party that wanted to see him removed? I open it up.
What does it matter? At the end of the day, we have a party that is left in tatters because of the way Patrick Brown ran it, the way his executive bullied members of this party.
Just in the interest of equal time here, right, because he's not here.
That's not completely accurate.
The party has more money than any other party. It's higher in the polls than any other party. It has more members than any other party. You say it's in tatters. It's got some problems, but in the interest of all of the facts, you'd have to grant
corruption or not.
Well, look, at the end of the day, the most important part of the party is its grassroots members. And when the party is not listening to the grassroots and sometimes even bullying the grassroots, then we've got problems. So I'm happy we can refocus onto the grassroots.
Do you think the PC party helped do him in?
I have no idea.
She's saying grassroots are a little too much for my liking.
I've been
starting to sound a
on
little
this leadership race. I know Patrick's trying to clear his name, but I think the most important thing that we all have to remember is that we need to select a leader who's going to win in this election. We need to win. We need a progressive conservative leader and government, and that's what I'm focused on, to become that person.
Anything you want to add about this?
Yeah, Patrick is working hard to clear his name. I know that as somebody who has been working alongside a lot of party volunteers, that there are great people in this party who dedicate a lot of their time to make sure that we are ready and that the party is strong come June 7th. And on March 10th, when I'm leader, I know that the party will be in a good position, a strong position, a better one, to defeat Kathleen Wynne. But the only way we can do that is if we elect a leader who can unify the party and bring in more people into the party and win on June 7th.
I got 10 minutes left here, and I still got a million questions I've still got, so I'm going to try and rifle through some of these quickly. Are you back in regardless of who wins?
Yes.
You're running regardless?
Absolutely,
Where are you running?
I'm looking at a couple of ridings right now. We have about 30 where we don't have nominated candidates, and I'm looking at a place that's a good fit for them and for me. They have to want me to be there, but I also want to run in a riding where I feel like I can be a good representative for its constituents and do a good job for them.
You live in Toronto?
I do now,
You're going to run in Toronto?
I'm looking at a couple of ridings in Toronto, but I'm looking at a few outside of Toronto as well.
Are you in regardless?
100%.
So even if you don't win the leadership, you're running in Etobicoke North?
Our family, my dad represented Etobicoke, my brother represented Etobicoke, my nephew, myself. We're very grateful. We have a great community that supported us, and I'm going to continue running.
Okay, let me put this to each of you, because obviously we started this hour with you telling us about your strengths for the job. You won't be surprised to hear there are some other people out there who think that you have some weaknesses, all of you, that need to be addressed. So we're going to do that right now. Okay, Doug Ford, many people like some of your politics. Other people fear that it could be a return, if you win, to the kind of chaos we saw when your brother was mayor of Toronto. This is not to take away from his legislative victories, of which there were some and of which you've told us about tonight. But it was chaotic. Do you feel a need to assure people it won't be if you win?
Well, first of all, I'm going to unite the party. And I wouldn't have been a successful businessman if I was divisive. I'm going to unite the party. We're going to move forward. We're going to start creating jobs. And we're going to make this the most prosperous province anywhere in North America.
Could you guarantee that it won't be as chaotic?
As far as I know, he's not on crack, so I don't think it'll be as chaotic.
Steve, you know, I was
and
there.
You know what? A little bit of chaos, I think, right now
God
will be
bless
okay.
him. He's not with us anymore. So I'm not there fighting to stick up to Rob anymore, unfortunately. If you're asking me if I'd stick up for my brother again, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Okay, gotcha.
But who I'm going to stick up for are the taxpayers that are being gouged by this Liberal government.
I get you.
Right
Forgive
now.
me again. I'm cutting you off because you're heavy on time. Christine Elliott, I mean, you know what's coming here. You've run twice for this job already. The party has rejected you twice already. What makes you think third time's the charm?
Because Ontario needs a progressive conservative government, and I believe that I have the experience, knowledge, and strength to win it for us.
I bet you did the previous 2 times as well, though, and the party turned its back on you. What will be different this time?
Well, I think I've learned a lot from last campaigns, and I think what is different about this campaign is it's so short, first of all, but you have to have a really good team on the ground. And so I'm working with volunteers from across the province who are helping me to sign up new members and have other members renew their memberships. It's a very organized group of people that are working. We have a good message.
How are you better now than you were the previous 2 times?
I've had more experience. I've had experience at Queen's Park, but over the last 2 years, I've also had extensive experience in healthcare. That's the biggest issue in our budget. It's very expensive, and a lot of people are concerned about healthcare in Ontario right now. People can't find quality, safe, long-term care beds for their parents. Their children are needing mental health and addiction services. If you have a child that has an eating disorder and you're told you have to wait a year to get services, that's dangerous.
Okay.
So I understand those issues, and I'm ready to talk about them.
Mrs. Granick Allen, the knock on you is you're a one-issue candidate. You care about social conservative issues, and you really have not much to say about anything else.
I haven't seen much.
That's the
too
knock
much.
on your candidacy. You want to
I think
speak to
your
that?
grassroots is just
How much
social
time do you got,
conservatives.
Steve? I can
Let's
talk
see.
about a lot
About
of
5
things.
minutes, actually. Go ahead.
No, you know what? I'm a successful business owner. I run a consulting company. I run a successful not-for-profit. I have a clear, principled voice. People know me. People trust me. They know my voice to be strong. Yes, I may not have a famous last name. Yes, I don't come from the
Now, that's
establishment.
twice you've said that. Who's that a knock on?
Well, take your pick. But or federally for that matter. But look, at the end of the day, people want someone who speaks for the grassroots conservatives. While Patrick Brown was dragging this party through the mud with his corruptive practices, I was speaking out. I did not shy away, and that's what we need: a clear voice, a clear leader for this party.
She
who's
did.
gonna
You can
take on the
find
hard
some
issues
articles
and
with her
speak
name on
clearly
it,
and loudly
speaking
and
out
I gotta
about
go over here
Patrick
now.
Brown.
Surprise, surprise. Guess what question's coming for you? You're applying for what could be the second hardest job in Canadian politics, and you have no experience. How can you be ready for this?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Christine and Doug, who are former politicians, and people do say that you need some political experience to be Premier of Ontario. But Kathleen Wynne has a lot of political experience, and that is what has gotten the province into the situation that we're in today.
No, it's her corruption.
And we need somebody.
Not
I'm
her
glad to hear
experience.
that they're all ready to run, but nobody here put their name forward and thought that this was important until the top job became available. We need somebody who has the energy and the commitment and the drive. And I know that what people are looking for is something different. They want a new approach to politics. They don't want a career politician. They want someone with private sector experience who cares and knows how to get the economy back on track, and who wants to reduce the size
That's
of
not
government,
her.
make life more affordable for Ontarians, and can do that while providing a positive vision for Ontario.
Do you think it's a drawback to your campaign? For those who want to consider you, you think it's a drawback you've never been elected?
I have been talking to people for some time now. People
Yes,
want
Lisa
something
Raitt and
completely
her friends.
new. I think that this is actually an opportunity to turn the page. After 15 years of Liberal government, people aren't looking for politicians to make their decisions anymore. They want policies that are implemented by somebody who's coming new, who's thinking about what
From a
is in the
political
best interest
dynasty?
of Ontario in the long term, not about politics and making political
Okay.
calculations.
I'm going to ask the Tanya Granick Allen question here, which is that, yes, 3 of you have very famous last names. Your late husband was an MPP and an MP. Your father and your brother were both in elective politics. Your dad, of course, was the 18th Prime Minister of Canada. I'm sure all of you were influenced by the experiences that they brought to their jobs. That's not the question I'm asking. I want to know one thing about you that you would do differently, Doug Ford, from the way Doug Sr., your dad, governed when he was in politics, or Rob, your brother, governed when he was in politics. What would you do differently from them?
Well, first of all, we share all the same values. It's about respecting the taxpayer.
That's
It's
not
about-
different. I want to know what something you'd be different at.
Well, that's a tough question because I believe in everything my dad did and I believed in everything Rob did. It's about respecting the taxpayers, putting money back into their pocket, make sure we have a transparent and accountable government.
Okay, so
make
that's
sure
not
there's integrity.
Okay, understood. How might you be different on your approach tackling issues than your late husband was, whom, you shared a seat, shared a life, etc.?
Well, we shared the same values as well. We had many discussions over 20 years about these things. We went through elections together. I've been successfully elected 4 times, and I think that really does count. But I got into politics really as a result of my volunteer involvement in mental health services, children's services, the Hospital Foundation, and so on. We co-founded the Ability Center in Whitby to promote inclusion for people, all people, regardless of abilities.
This question's not going anywhere, is it? I can't get you guys to bite on this, can I?
He didn't have that background.
Okay.
I have more knowledge in that area than he had.
Okay. Caroline Mulrooney.
I'm not going to give you what you want either.
Okay.
My father made great when he implemented policies. When he was thinking about what to do, he was really thinking about what was in the long-term best interest of Canada, not about what was popular. And that's the opposite of what's been happening.
He's a big supporter of Trudeau. He works for Trudeau.
Can I ask you a somewhat different question, since you don't have as famous a last name, and that is, you're up against 3 pretty heavy hitters here who've been in this, either in as candidates or certainly involved with politics for a long time. You aren't, and fewer people know you than know them. How do you compete in this field?
Well, actually, I've been involved in the Conservative Party for probably over 20 years at the grassroots level.
You've said it yourself. Your name is not as famous as theirs.
No, it's not, and I'm glad. I'm happy for that, because I don't carry the baggage that perhaps some of these names do. But at the end of the day, where were these candidates when Kathleen Wynne was ramming through crazy policies to our province? For example, like her sex ed agenda. I was out there in the trenches with the grassroots, speaking out again and again on these issues. When Kathleen Wynne was coming up with all sorts of absurdities. For example, Christine, you were co-sponsor for Bill 77. That's the Transgender Therapy Ban bill. I mean, parents are upset about that because that decision and that vote that you made overrode parental choice. So now parents who have a gender-confused child can't seek out that therapy because you voted for this bill and because it passed.
We're down to a minute. I have to give you a chance to respond to that if you want.
Well, I support the needs of people who are vulnerable in Ontario, and I can tell you that there are many groups that don't have a voice. I want to be an advocate to make sure that everyone can have a voice at Queen's Park. Not everybody lives the same kind of life. I respect that, and I want to listen to all voices in Ontario and represent them.
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't have to you don't have to erode parental choice. If a parent has a child who needs some therapy, why should politicians be making decisions that will limit the parent's options for therapy for that child?
I have always thought that parents should be involved in making those decisions.
Then why did you co-sponsor that bill?
The bill never eliminated parental choice. Parental choice and parental responsibility has always been there. But what I think is really important is that we need to stand up for all people in Ontario. Not everybody is the same. Not everybody makes the same life choices. I respect that.
And that is our time. And hopefully when we go back in the control room, you're all going to be roughly the same number. Fingers crossed. Can I thank Tanya Granick Allen and Christine Elliott and Doug Ford and Caroline Mulrooney. Yes, that's how it's pronounced, everybody. Caroline Mulrooney. For coming into TVO at our studios in Yonge and Eglinton tonight and having a very vigorous debate on some of the issues of the day. And we wish you all well on March the 10th, which is Decision Day for the Ontario PC Party.
All right, that was the debate. So I'm curious what you guys thought about what all the candidates said. Personally, from what I think, Mulrooney seemed to be running on a script. So it seems like she just was reciting whatever she had been told to say, and a few times she started, when she was almost put off script, you could start see her getting nervous. So I'm not really expecting much from her. Plus, like, some of the things she's talking about, she has support. She's like talking about how she's going to do nothing different than her father, where her father is a big supporter of Trudeau. Does that mean she's going to be a big supporter of Trudeau? I really hope not. I think Doug Ford, his strategy was to play it a little bit safe. So anything he wasn't sure 100% on, I think he was taking the much safer approach, and this is why he was refusing to comment on certain things. He did avoid a few questions from my point of view. That's not changing my support for the guy so far, because he still wants to do the stuff that I'm hoping to see. I would like to see a bit more of a platform, though. I am a bit of a platform guy, so I would like to see something, but that's what I think his approach was about. Christine Elliott did pretty well, I would say, although there were a few times that she was avoiding the questions, especially kind of what happened between her and Tanya Granick Allen at the end. I really felt that she was not giving the full answer. But when they were talking about the economy and stuff, she did pretty well, but then again, she was also married to Jim Flaherty, and as she said, her and Jim had plenty of conversations over their 20-year marriage. Jim Flaherty was one of the best finance ministers we ever had. So economically wise, I actually think that Christine Elliott would be a good candidate. However, again, she seems to be more of a long-term politician, part of the more establishment, so not really what I'm interested in. And that brings us to probably the least known face in the debate, Tanya Granick Allen, which I thought it was completely ridiculous that the host actually forgot her name or didn't know her name. You should know that coming into the debate. I also found that she seemed to be getting... It didn't seem like she got her full time. Maybe it's just me, but I found a few times she was getting cut off when I felt like she was not talking that much. So whether that was deliberate or whatever, I'm not sure. She seems like, for her personality-wise, she could really go head-to-head with Doug Ford. However, I think so far the support for Ford is still stronger, so it's possible we could see those two as the final. But her just constant her constant talking about the grassroots, it really seemed a little bit fake after a while. Like, she was trying to make it seem like she's part of the grassroots. I really don't know much about her, so if anybody does know, feel free to let me know anything you know about this candidate. But she definitely had a much more fiery approach than the three others, so I think this debate may have actually garnered her some more support, which is what she needs, because being the less known candidate, she's really relying on such as the debates in order to get her name out, because the press is barely talking about her. It was alternative press that were speaking about her first, and then maybe 2 or 3 days afterwards is when a couple of articles came out from mainstream media sources, but then soon after it really wasn't much. And a few of them were actually even saying how she just had no chance of winning, so interesting. So far, I would still put my support behind Doug Ford because I think he is the candidate we'd want. I think he is the true grassroots candidate. I think he is the one that will put the money back in our pocket and do what we, the people, are trying to look for. So my support has not changed for Doug Ford after this debate. Next one, as far as I know, is supposed to be, I think it was February 28th in Ottawa. So that'll be the next one, and I'll be trying to do another one of these again. So when that debate comes up, you can join me again here, and we will do this all over again. Thank you very much. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is Just My Stupid Opinion.